Eagles fans, this is Mike Kaye from NJ Advanced Media, and welcome to the No Huddle Show podcast, where we discuss anything and everything Philadelphia Eagles. You can read our content on NJ.com/Eagles, bookmark that, and you can subscribe to our exclusive Eagles Insider Text service, where we'll break news, give you insider observations, and provide in-depth analysis. Through Eagles Extra, you can send questions and comments directly to us, and we'll respond to your phone. With me today, as always, is my fellow Eagles beat reporter, Chris Franklin. Today we're going to discuss the Eagles 2021 draft haul, the team's biggest needs and depth chart, plus we'll give you grades for each pick as we break down each selection. Chris, how you doing today?
Not bad, man. It was definitely an interesting experience going through this first draft, with you. It was fun, and looking forward to go ahead and talking this draft, man. How you doing?
Well, since you were so enthusiastic, I'm doing terrific. Just kidding.
No Red Bull today. That's why it's been a little weird.
Yeah, I can feel you. I just actually put my Red Bull back in the fridge because I've had a lot of coffee already today, and then I had a raspberry iced tea. So I was like, I'm probably already all right, but I'll probably need it by like 4 o'clock. Anywho, I felt like we put out a lot of, I don't mean to toot our own horn, but I felt like we put out a lot of content this weekend and a lot of good stuff. We did a lot of analysis. We did a lot of grades. We did some features. Overall, I thought it was a successful weekend for the NJAM Eagles crew. I also thought the Giants beat writers and Jets beat writers did a fantastic job as well. I put out a piece that I'm pretty proud of today about Devonta Smith, basically just giving you the ins and outs of his personality, what people close to him think motivates him, what people talk about is his strengths, his weaknesses, his workman-like mentality. You can check that out on NJ.com. Bring your reading glasses. It's a bit of a longer read. But I thought we kind of really captured the moment, or at least I hope we did. And I'm ready to talk about this draft because I think it's one of the more intriguing drafts that Howie Roseman has had in quite some time. To me, it's very clear that they stuck to their board. We'll talk a little bit about ESPN capturing that awkward moment during or immediately after the Milton Williams pick. But yeah, Chris, overall, your sentiments on this draft class?
I thought it was pretty good given the circumstance where they were picking and how they were able to maneuver around the board at times. I think they did. It was like a sandwich. You had the day one and the day three. I thought they did extremely well. Well, I wouldn't say extremely. I thought they did well. I think that day two, there are a couple of questions, especially we'll talk about a little later as well too. But overall, I think given that his team, and there's no sugarcoating, this team, I don't think is going to be competing for a Super Bowl next year, and they're in the middle of a rebuild. So given the pieces that they need and what they had to address, overall, I thought it wasn't a bad draft class completely. How about you?
Well, I think you hit it on the head. This is a transition period or a rebuild, whatever you want to call it. And it's about getting the best players. It's not necessarily fitting for need. That's why BPA is so important. And a lot of people, you'll have a lot of people complain, they didn't target a corner early. Well, they did. JC Horn and Patrick Surtain just came off the board before they were able to trade up to get them. I think Devonta Smith is going to be a guy that a lot of people like. I think he definitely upgrades the offense, especially the wide receiver group. I think he's a true number one wide receiver. I know there are concerns about his slender build, but I do think he's a guy who can win one-on-one because of his route running prowess, because he's a technician. He does still have speed. He does actually have some under-the-radar strength, too. He's got big hands. He catches pretty much everything. So I don't think the size issue is overblown, but I think it's about his slender frame and not necessarily his size, because he's 6 foot, 166 pounds. I think he'll play probably closer to 172. I think that's kind of more of where he's at. But I gave the pick a B+. What would you give the pick, obviously, with the trade up and everything else?
I'd give it an A. I mean, he was the guy for a lot of mocks. I thought the Eagles were going to go corner on the defensive and address the defensive side of the ball. I think the biggest thing is going to be is how Nick Sirianni is going to use him in a scheme. I still think even if he lines up as that X receiver on the line, I think he's quick enough and he's able to get enough of a release and separation that it won't be a problem. But I'm really curious to see if they'll go ahead and use him in motion, if they go ahead and use him in backfield to try to get him lined up against a safety, stuff like that. There's so much you can do with him because of his skill set. And then when he runs his routes, it is so precise and he's disguised which way he's going. I mean, you look at, you don't know, but all of his routes look the same. You don't know if he's going inside or outside when you're 10 yards down the field. And with every little inch helps when it comes to trying to get that separation. So overall, I thought I liked it. Even though they had to give a 3rd round pick, I thought you kept him out the hands of the Giants and you're able to still get somebody that's transform your wide receiver core. And I think it benefits everybody else. I think it definitely helps Jalen Reagor because all that pressure won't be on him. And I think that especially if Smith has success early on, that will enable a lot more one-on-one coverage for Reagor. So I think overall it just helps the Eagles offense. Yeah,
I agree with that. And for our audience at home, when we say X receiver, we're talking about the wide receiver who's isolated on the outside at the line of scrimmage, meaning he's going to face press man coverage if a team plays press. It means he's going to try to be thrown off his route physically. The Z receiver is the flanker. He's about 2 yards behind the line of scrimmage. And so you're able to kind of move and get out of your set really easily. And out of your breaks very easily because you have that cushion. Because if a cornerback is dropping in coverage, you have space to kind of get open. Obviously, the slot receiver, is on the inside. He has space as well. The concern about Devonta Smith is that if he gets roughed up at the line too often, is he going to break down physically? Or is he going to have durability issues? But here's the thing, and Nick Sirianni brought this up before the draft. He's used T.Y. Hilton as an X receiver, and T.Y. Hilton's pretty small. Devonta Smith is taller. I mean, he obviously probably weighs a little bit less, but I think that's a good comparison. And when you look at, we'll get a little bit more into this as we go pick by pick, but I think when you look at the offensive players they brought in, they fit a certain archetype that was in the Colts offense. As we talk about wide receivers, I think you can compare Travis Fulgham to a Michael Pittman. I think you can compare Jalen Reagor to a Zach Pascal, an undrafted wide receiver who became a key part of that offense, who was, really a guy who is ascending. He got a 2nd round tender this year as a restricted free agent. And he's a decent number 2, number 3 wide receiver. I think Reagor is much more talented and will be much more successful, but I think you can make that comparison as far as size, skill set, and versatility. And then when you look at Smith, I think you can compare him from a speed factor, from a route running perspective, to T.Y. Hilton. He might actually be a lot more evolved than Hilton was coming into the league, but I think that all matches up. Let's get into the real controversial pick here. Lyndon Dickerson in the 2nd round, number 37. There were rumors that the Giants also wanted Dickerson and were trying to trade up, but the Eagles stayed put and drafted Dickerson. Now, Dickerson's got a laundry list of injuries. He started his college career at FSU, suffered a couple of different ankle injuries, or he suffered an ACL injury as a freshman, then had a season-ending ankle injury in his 2nd year, then another ankle injury in his 3rd year, got his degree, transferred to Alabama, played an entire year as a junior, was one of the best interior linemen in the country. Then this past year had an incredible year, but tore his ACL, I believe it was the 2nd to last game of the season, and still won the Remington Award as the best interior offensive lineman in the country. So the dude's got Pro Bowl talent. I spoke to 3 different talent evaluators who all praised the pick by the Eagles. 2 of them said that they thought he could be an immediate Pro Bowl level starter. Another one said he would have been a top 20 pick had he not been coming off an ACL injury. Now, 2 ACL injuries, that's kind of rough. But what's your overall take on that, Chris?
I thought it's one of those high risk picks that if in 3 years from now, if he looks like an all pro, it looks great. But there's still so many questions with those injuries, especially as an interior lineman, and you have to worry about not a lot of people like rolling over, like especially when you have going into short yard situations or you're trying to do a cut block, somebody you're pushed back, defensive lineman pushes you back and you roll over, and this guy's already had ACL injuries. you're always going to be holding your breath. It's going to scare you a little bit. I mean, he definitely has a lot of power as an interior lineman. He gives you a lot of versatility. I mean, he's mentioned before he's played all 5 of offensive line positions. He's definitely not going to be a tackle, but playing as a center or guard, it gives you a lot of options. You can either use him at the left guard, replace Sayamalu if the team decides it wants to move on in the future from Brandon Brooks. You got that. Most likely as a center, what Jason Kelsey keeps saying, hey, you know what? He keeps contemplating retirement. He would fit in perfectly. But the problem is going to be, is he going to be available to go ahead and play there? And how long can those knees and ankle surgery and everything else, how long can that all hold up? And if he can find a way to remain on the field, this is going to look like a great pick. It's just so many question marks on there with this.
Yeah, and the feedback I'm getting is he's an incredible pass protector, very, very smart. And the thing is I wonder if they view picking him this year, he can back up all 3 interior spots and maybe not have as much wear and tear in theory, and then eventually take over for Kelsey or take over for Sayamalu if they move Sayamalu into center or, as you mentioned, Brandon Brooks. His versatility is important. His character is important. But yeah, it's a massive risk. I gave this a C. What would you give it?
This is the one I probably give. I hate when we agree to a lot of stuff. It's definitely a C because it can go either way. If he's hurt and he's out of the league within 5 years because of these injuries, it's a horrible pick in the second round. But like it is enough. It was good value. I know you don't want to say, especially in the second round, it's a value pick, but given the way he played and what he offers, it definitely was. So I give it C, probably C plus. I'll give C plus in that range.
All right, cool. So let's talk about Milton Williams, another controversial pick, I guess you could say. So the Eagles traded, obviously, their 84th overall pick, the pick they got from the Carson Wentz trade, to move up to 10 to get Devonta Williams. So they only had 1 third-round pick after all. When it was all said and done, they picked Milton Williams, Louisiana Tech, defensive tackle / defensive end. Wait, did I say his name? Sorry, my brain just turned off. So Louisiana Tech defensive lineman Milton Williams. Before we get into the grade and talk about the player, there was a moment where senior advisor Tom Donahue had an awkward moment with Howie Roseman, where Howie Roseman was kind of taking a victory lap, and Donahue reluctantly hand pounded him. Roseman addressed the situation after ESPN caught the footage. He said, there were players on the board that they really like, but they traded back 3 spots with the Carolina Panthers to pick up a 6th-round pick. It was kind of a cute move. So I could understand why somebody who probably was pounding the table for one of the 2 players that got picked in front of them would be frustrated, but it seems like defensive coordinator Jonathan Gannon was super stoked about this pick. Jonathan Gannon's a former NFL scout. He's a longtime DBs coach, and now he's the defensive coordinator. Everybody has said that Aaron Robinson from UCF, the cornerback, was probably the guy that Donahue wanted. The problem, though, is you've got a former DBs coach and a former scout excited about a hybrid defensive tackle, defensive end. But everybody seemed to be copacetic after that. It seemed like they followed their board, but they probably did want a corner because, as we've mentioned several times, that was their biggest need entering the draft. So, Chris, you start off. Give me your impressions of Milton Williams. What do you think?
Well, I think he gives you a lot. And I'm saying this a lot, but it's a lot of versatility. He's able to play defensive tackle, defensive end, strong as hell. He goes, his bench press 500 pounds, which is pretty impressive. And I think this is a move for the future, given the way the contract status of Fletcher Cox and Javon Hargrave is beyond after 2022. You have a lot of flexibility and go a different direction as well too. So I think he fits more of that mold. And you mentioned it earlier, especially with Aaron Robinson on board, you have a defensive backs coach, a former defensive backs coach, and he's saying, you know what, I'd rather go to the lineman. I mean, that could have been pretty telling as of what his view was when it came to there. But I look at Williams, I think he can be a good rotational guy. I mean, this team going into the draft had some questions when it came to depth. I mean, you had Raekwon Williams and Hassan Ridgeway. And Ridgeway, I had no problem with. Williams, I have some questions with. But if you pair for a second unit, you pair Williams with Ridgeway, I think pass rush can actually be good.
Yeah, I agree. I think this team needed kind of an Andy Reid style fireball. A guy you could kind of like Darren Howard, where you could kind of move him around the rotation because, look, they've got 3 defensive ends, one who's 33 and 2 guys who are on the final years of their rookie contracts. A defensive tackle, you got 2 veterans making a crap ton of money and like nothing else. And so to take care of both needs in those rotations and kind of have like a sub package player who could eventually develop into a long time contributor as a starter, I actually really like this move. It's very clear that they wanted versatility in this draft. Devonta Smith can play all 3 wide receiver spots. Lyndon Dickerson can play guard and center. And then obviously with Milton Williams, he can play all around the defensive line. So I was a fan of this pick. The Athletics, Dane Brugler, who put together maybe the best draft guide I think I've ever seen. He had Milton Williams ranked as his, I believe it was his 70th overall player. They traded back 3 spots from the 70th overall pick to 73 and got him. So, and they got a 6th round pick, which is nice. Okay, so let's grade this pick. I think I gave it a B-. What do you give it?
I give it a solid B. Definitely what he can provide and his if he develops a second pass rush, he said he uses a stab club, his pass rush, but if he can get a second or even third rush, I think it's going to pan out in the long run. It's going to look very well.
So here's what I'll say. Let's get into day 4. You and I were adamant they needed a cornerback, and they got one in Texas Tech cornerback Zach Mcpherson. He started his career off at Penn State, was more of a special teams player, moved to Texas Tech, became a 2-year starter and a captain. Really good special teams player. I think he blocked 2 extra points and a field goal during his time at Texas Tech, but he's also got some pretty good ball skills. 5'11", around 200 pounds or 191 pounds. He's got good size. He can play inside, outside. I see him as the favorite to be the number 2 corner until they end up signing somebody who I think will end up happening. Harry Roseman mentioned that they're probably not done at the cornerback position and kind of used the Ronald Darby preseason trade from 2017 as an example. Steven Nelson's still out there. I'm sure there are going to be corners that are on the block. The Eagles have 10 2022 picks. They might be able to swap them. Zach Ertz is still a trade chip, so we'll see if there's a player for player deal there. I like this pick a lot. The Eagles said that they liked him so much they thought about trading up into the 3rd round for him. Daniel Jeremiah had him as a top 100 player. Brugler did as well. Brugler really, really liked him too. I think he was his 16th ranked cornerback and had him as like a 3rd round pick. So what do you think, Chris?
With Mcpherson, I thought there could have been a little bit more value in that. This highlights that 2nd round pick with Dickerson a little bit more. I thought they should have grabbed, if they were going to grab one, they should have grabbed one in the 2nd round and I'm glad they didn't trade up in the 3rd round to get him. I mean, to me, he's a little stiff when it goes to those deep routes, and he belongs in a zone which the Eagles are going to run, which is a fine. I don't see him overtaking Avonte Maddox now or in the future. I think he's slotted. He's a good replacement for Nickel Roby-Coleman, I guess, because I think the way Nickel Roby-Coleman performed, I think anybody would have been a little bit better with that. But I think can be a nickel corner in this thing. And like you mentioned before, he's a good special teams player, but they better be right about Dickerson, because if McPherson can't contribute or anything like that for us, he's going to highlight that pick even more.
I think you use him on the outside in his own defense. He's definitely his own corner. There's no question about it. And I think Maddox has no business being on the outside. None. Nope. Absolutely none. So, I mean, look, I think the Eagles will end up signing or trading for a corner. They have to at this point. Whether it's a rebuild or not, they have to be competitive. And when you look at the wide receivers around this division, I mean, Washington's upgraded. The Giants seem to have 1 million wide receivers now. The Cowboys seem to have 1 million wide receivers. So I think when you're looking at that, they're going to have to upgrade. But I think McPherson, at worst, can be a really, really good number 4 corner for this season as a rookie. At best, I think he is the favorite to start opposite Darius Slay. So,
and also, and just to say something quick as well, so didn't you think they were at least going to they seemed like they owned the entire 6th round pick. Didn't you think they were at least going to try to trade for a veteran corner at least to go help out? I mean, I'm talking about
that's what I thought. Yeah, for sure.
You would think.
Well, I guess nobody was worth the 6th round pick. I don't know. But there really weren't a lot of like veteran trades like there had been the last couple of years. So I don't know, maybe teams didn't want to trade good for bad or known for unknown. I gave the pick an A- because I do think that the value was there. I think he's going to be pretty. He kind of reminds me of Ellis Hobbs a little bit.
Good comparison.
I like it. Even if he's not a good starting cornerback, it seems like he's a great special teams player, which is something they've lacked for a very long time. Like Rudy Ford was good, but like they need like a long-term young guy who can do this thing. What do you give it?
I give it a C+. I just think, yeah, C+.
All right, let's get to what I think was their best pick of the draft. Kind of called this in advance, but Kenneth Gainwell from Memphis, the running back. He is Nyheim Hines, in my opinion. Now, if you study the Colts offense, Nyheim Hines was their third down gadget receiver back, and they used him to perfection. He was phenomenal. Really, really good weapon. And I think Gainwell is a little bit more talented physically, but I think they can use him almost identically. And I brought that comparison up to Nick Sirianni, and he agreed with me. So pat on my back. I heard that's what you're supposed to do if you have a podcast. You're supposed to celebrate yourself at every moment. At least that's what happens on some podcasts.
We're doing it wrong then.
Yeah, we're doing clearly. Whatever. What are you going to do? Celebrate yourself. Anyway, so I think this was a great pick. A lot of pundits had Gainwell as a third, fourth round pick. They got him in the fifth round. I gave it an A. You give me your overall take and your grade on this pick.
This was an A. I thought it's a great pickup. I mean, I think it'll be a good compliment to Miles Sanders. And imagine the different formations they can use. You've had him and Sanders back there. You have Smith on the field along with. There's so much you can do, and the way to scheme up the designs and everything. It's just he brings a lot. I love his speed. He's good out catching the ball out the backfield as well too, and if he gets matched up with a linebacker one-on-one on the outside, I'd probably say 7 to 8 times out of 10, he's going to win that matchup. So I love the pick. I think he contribute this season. And I think a lot of people are going to be happy with this overall.
Yeah, I think he complements Miles Sanders and Boston Scott pretty well, especially if you look at Indy's offense from last year. So let's get into the sixth round. With the 189th overall pick, the Eagles took Marlon
Tuapulolu.
Yeah, there you go. That a boy. I'm just going to call in Marlon T for right, Mr. T. So Mr. T, the defensive tackle from USC, both Dane Brugler and Daniel Jeremiah had him as a top 100 player. Both of them had him as like the third or fourth guy at the position. We know this was a weak defensive tackle class, but he's a guy that I think can come in and be a long-term nose tackle for this team. Mr. T and Milton Williams could be that second-tier platoon for this Eagles team moving forward. I like this pick. I gave it a B. What do you say?
I thought it was solid as well, too. It's a B in my book as well. You just need somebody who's adequate enough that won't overshoot their gaps in the middle in the run game as well, too. And he's just solid overall. I mean, they're going to have to beef up this area. And as mentioned earlier, the defensive tackle situation a couple of years from now, there's a lot of question marks around it. So adding him to it just gives you another solid option in the middle of the defensive line. So overall, it deserves a B.
191st overall, they select Taryn Jackson, defensive end from Coastal Carolina. This dude was a numbers machine. I think he had like 24 sacks and like 46 tackles for loss. A little undersized, 6'2", around 245. This was obviously a flyer pick with upside. He'll probably play a lot of special teams. He'll be a rotational defensive end. But as I mentioned earlier, Brandon Graham, Josh Sweat, and Derek Barnett are like really the only three proven defensive ends on this roster. Joe Osman's there. Matt Leo, your guy, is still there, but he's probably a ways away from being on the field. Jackson can come in and be that fourth defensive end, kind of move around, kind of be that Jannard Avery type, which I actually think this fits what they were doing with Schwartz, with Jannard Avery more than Jannard Avery actually does, who now moves to linebacker. But I thought it was fine. I gave it a C+. What do you think?
I gave it an A. I love what this guy do. Like production, even when people go, "Oh well, it's Coastal Carolina." Now I think when you look at what Sun Belt players. I think that the Sun Belt's an underrated conference. There's a lot of good talent down there. And the fact this guy was able to put up 18 sacks within that span of time he was down there, I mean, in the last couple of years, guy is good. I love the way he gets around the edge. I love his speed, and he brings a different combination of moves around on the edge as well too. So I think I'm going to, if I had to compare like what he could be, I think he could be a Josh Sweat like type of player. And I think he's able to go, if he's able to continue to develop and put on I'd probably say if he could put on 5 more pounds, that'd be even better, which he probably will. I think he's going to be a good contributor and a good defensive lineman for his team.
I think he needs to get to 260, to be honest with you. So let's move on to like so their last 2 picks were kind of similar in that they were billed as certain positions in college, played certain positions in college, and billed differently in the pros, which when you're in the 6th and 7th round, it makes sense. We should also mention that the Eagles traded a 6th and 7th round pick, their last picks in each round, to Washington for a 2022 5th round pick. Thought that was a brilliant move. With so many like things up in the air and the evaluation process being incomplete, I thought it made a lot of sense. So they take Jacoby Stevens, safety from LSU. They build him as a linebacker. And I think that's really smart. He's 6'2", 211 pounds. Really, really, really good blitzer for a college safety. I think he had like 9.5 sacks, which is more sacks than Mr. T had, and he's a defensive lineman. And then you look at his ball skills. He had 4 interceptions, was really good on special teams, was a team captain. I think he can come in and compete with, Davian Taylor and Sean Bradley and all those guys for like the first bite of the apple on the outside behind Alex Singleton and either Eric Wilson or whoever you put on the weak side if Wilson's the middle linebacker. I gave it a B-. What do you think?
This is a B. I think I liked his recognition when he was diagnosing a lot of plays. I love the fact that he has the athleticism to play that zone and to be able to cover a tight end across the middle. So given where he was selected and the role that he could play, I think he could be a decent player, and I give this a B.
Okay, so last pick in the draft, 234, Patrick Johnson, defensive end, Tulane. Now, he was billed as a linebacker, which makes a lot of sense because he played the strong side edge in college, which is a stand-up position. So he'll be, we talk about linebackers with hook responsibilities. Those are normally the middle linebacker and weak side linebacker, meaning they're off the ball. Johnson can be at the line of scrimmage and be used as a blitzer, can be, used to stunt and kind of get around offensive linemen in creative ways. I get it. It makes sense for a 7th round pick, but whatever. C+. What do you got?
I give it a B-, just like what you got with Teron Jackson. I think he's able to provide that pass rushing ability. And like you mentioned, he's a 3-4 guy, so it's going to take a little bit for him to get used to the 4-3, I believe, especially if they use him with his hand in the ground. So I think that could be a little bit of a transition. But I mean, if Jim Schwartz was here, I think he would have loved him. He would have had him here. But under Gannon, what potentially could use, it might be a fit. It might be a fit question for him. But overall, I think it was a B-. I think he gives I think he has enough talent, especially for the 7th round. I thought he did all right.
Well, I think we've gotten some clues as to how they're going to use the Sam linebacker role because they are moving Jannard Avery from defensive end to linebacker. And I would imagine that if they're going to be in base and use a Sam linebacker, they're going to want to blitz that Sam linebacker or use him in coverage. And I think Jannard Avery and Patrick Johnson kind of fit the mold of the sub-package player on 3rd down. Where if they give you, a 12 personnel look, you're kind of going in there and you're trying to figure out how you can misdirect. But yeah, I think it's interesting. Overall, I gave the class a B. Where were you at with the class?
I give it a B mainly because the 1st and 3rd days. I think overall Devonta Smith helped that grade out a lot. But I think the last 3 picks that they used really helped raise their grade.
So let's get over to their depth charts and needs. Obviously, Devonta Smith's going to be one of their starting 3 wide receivers. I'd imagine Travis Fulgham and Jalen Reagor, the other 2 guys. They'll probably rotate. One of them will be in the slot. One of them will be at one of the other outside positions. Do you agree?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think they really, truly need a cornerback because there's so many.
You're jumping the gun a little, but yeah, let's just get in that, okay? They definitely need a corner. Look, that's a pressing need. If anything, if they're going to make a move now, that's the move, right?
Yeah.
I think they could use a veteran swing tackle, but I like what they got going on the offensive line. I think wide receiver's fine. I think tight end, they're definitely going to get rid of Zach Ertz still. Don't get any glimmers of hope there. But yeah, corner. That's what it is. It's corner. They need a corner.
I was really shocked. I really wanted to see the Eagles, especially when you mentioned tight end. I mean, with all the reports of Ertz seeking his own trade, and we all thought that he was going to be going during the draft too. I mean, a lot of people thought he was going to be going, and you have Caleb Wilson and Jason Crimsey back up. I would have liked them to see, or at least try to attempt to see, them sign Kenny Yeboah. He got paid a lot of guarantee money to go to the Jets. So with that guaranteed money, but I thought he would have been a good red zone target. He has the size. He's developed the hand. I mean, remember in his Temple, he had bricks for hands, but he developed into a good pass catching tight end. So would love to see him as like the number 2 tight end on his team. But I think they're going to find an option as a backup for Dallas Goedert.
Yeah, I mean, I think they could bring back somebody like Richard Rodgers or even somebody like Trey Burton, who's still on the market. He played for the Colts last year under Jason Michael, their new tight ends coach, Sirianni, obviously. So I think that could work as well. But guys, remember, you can sign up for Eagles Extra free for 2 weeks as we get into the off season. NJ.com/text. Come join us. We're having fun on there. Chris took over for the draft and it really went well. Got a lot of positive feedback there. Then you can also remember to download and rate 5 stars for wherever you get your podcast for the No Huddle Show podcast. We appreciate all the feedback. We've gotten so much great feedback lately. And we appreciate you guys letting us know what we're doing right and what we're doing wrong, actually. We love the feedback. So for Chris, I'm Mike. We'll see you soon.
This is what renting furniture with Feather looks like. Pieces that fit your style and your space and cost less than your monthly phone bill. Oh, and did we mention delivery and assembly included? Feather. Start renting at livefeather.com.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a new season we recommend.
I'm Sam Bungie, one of the hosts of West Cork, a story about a community on the far south coast of Ireland that became a kind of paradise for people looking for a fresh start.
And nobody knew their past. You could be who you wanted to be, rather than who you really were.
Then one newcomer was murdered, and another was suspected of doing it.
I see in the market, and really, he's always trying to be normal and trying to get people to like him. But we all know, don't we?
Listen to West Cork now on Acast.
Acast recommends.